Hello there, and welcome to 10 Tips and Tricks for Beginners and the early game in Soulash 2. In this video, I'm going to cover lots of things that will help you out early on, because, there's lots of things that I think make the game a little bit hard to get into, but once you know them, it's really easy and chill. So, number one, how to get that bone for your first knife. As many might know or might not know, a cutting tool is one thing in this game which really gets you into the game real quick. You can always craft yourself one quickly with some bone, and you can, of course, pick while you're generating your character the adventuring background, and then you have access to a knife. But in all honesty, it's a bit of a waste. For one solution, you can always check out the cities of the bone wraiths. They all have scavengers dens. That's one of their baseline buildings, and these produce bones. All you need to do then is to ask somebody for the direction to the local scavengers den. Then you move your bacon over there, ask somebody nicely to sell you some bone, and that is it. So once you're here, you just buy some bones and don't ask where they came from, and then you just craft yourself your knife. Easy as that. Obviously, sometimes you just need to travel to these cities first, but you really don't need to worry too much about that, as even your starting wallet has enough to facilitate that. Number two, the water skin. So once you have your knife, it is a lot easier to get yourself food. After that, you want to get yourself a water skin. There's two methods that I know of how you can get yourself one. Number one, sometimes you are very lucky and getting yourself a city in your vicinity that has a tavern. Sometimes people in taverns allow you to order items. And I've seen it that I was able to order myself a water skin there. That's the most comfy way. Here in this world, I have nobody in the vicinity who's able to do so. The other approach that I usually go for is set out into the world and go to find some adventuring sites. Once you find these, you train your adventuring skill with that. And the more of these you discover, eventually you will hit Adventuring 6 yourself, and then you can craft these. The next important thing to note is that these require leather to craft. That means you either kill some snakes along the way. In my experience, snakes are really one of the easiest sources of leather, or you find yourself a city that has one of these production buildings that has leather in its stockpiles. It's very important, though, that you're looking specifically for leather and not fur, as fur won't work. We need leather for this recipe. If you struggle like I do here in the beginning, ideally you just go a few steps away from your hometown, and then you go back to rehydrate yourself. Dehydration doesn't kill you off in an instant. No, not by far. You have plenty of time to explore those regions. These sometimes even contain bodies of water where you can refresh yourself, or you just walk past these streams. All of these things give you access to water early on. It is really cool to have that water skin, but early on, can't travel further than that, and once you have Adventuring 6, you can craft it yourself. Number 3, food is literally everywhere. It is really not that horrible to find food. You can either play a species that can catch fish with their bare hand. You can also roam through forests and plains to find stuff there. Once you have that knife, you can also pretty much kill everything and scavenge afterwards for meat. It is really not that hard. If you're lacking a knife to begin with, I strongly suggest walking through forests and go for berry bushes. Some forest tiles have a very high bias towards berry bushes. You just need to roam through a few of these and you will find lots of berry bushes, and you'll be well off with that. Number 4, train your skills here for stats. Everything which has a 0 out of 10 can be leveled up until 10 for no hindering of your further build ideas whatsoever, because only if you increase your potential you will have spent something permanent on your character development. So that means sword fighting up until 10 is worth it because it gives stat points. Mace fighting up until 10, same. Everything that yields stat points should be brought up until the maximum point because it will make your character stronger. You don't need to go further than that. You should then evaluate what's the build of my character. But for example here, with that sword, I'll go forth and skill up my sword fighting up until 10 and enjoy the free stat points. While we're talking stat points, number 5, how to spend your stat points well. So first of all, my go-to solution is like this. One stat I define as my main damage stat, be that strength, dexterity, or intelligence. Strength is a couple of weapon categories. Dexterity is the same, mostly ranged weapons and spears, and intelligence is all the magic stuff. So once I know what I want to do damage-wise, my starting points I invest into this damage stat. Then all of the off stats that I got here from axe fighting, mace fighting, athletics, and whatnot, I start distributing in the remaining stats, namely endurance, willpower, and then, well, it depends on your build. If your build is a dexterity and intelligence build, you should absolutely invest into strength. Why? Because of the carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is so important because without it, you can't wear proper gear, and that means you'll be dying. Every build should have at least a third of these free stat points, as I might call them now, originating from all the things that you don't really incorporate into your build. A third of these should be into strength. So my personal guideline is I want to have the ability to be able to carry around 70-ish kilogram or whatever the weight thing here is, and then I'm done with strength. Sadly, it is a necessity because otherwise, like I said, your gear will suck. Apart from that, once you are done with that distribution, focus the rest of your stat points into a mixture of damage and resilience. Endurance and willpower go a long way in the late game in the later stages of the game, and I personally see it not really how to put it. It is absolutely mandatory to have points in endurance and willpower eventually because you will need to soak up a lot of abuse in these late stage encounters. And if you don't have the necessary HP and resistances, you'll be dying. Of course, you also need the damage to penetrate the enemy's resistances and beat them in time, but you also need the resilience to beat them as well. Take that into account in your stat distribution. Number 6, go for easy locations, here these, but beware the Savannah and the Tundra. In the current iteration, while I'm recording this, the Savannah and the Tundra have monsters spawning in there, which are just much more difficult than everything that can spawn anywhere else. Altogether, easy locations are what the name implies, as long as you avoid the Savannah and the Tundra, as these spawn enemies that are not only very, very devastating with their damage, they're also fast, or incapacitate you. I won't be spoilering more, but altogether, you should definitely stick to the easy locations to get your skills all up to the max. After that, troublesome locations will be beatable, but whatever you do, don't go too quickly into the troublesome locations. And here, as a side spoiler, finding a fisherman village is also a dirt cheap way of getting yourself a knife. So, number 7, let's get moving over to that already. Save money for your city. Early game, I would strongly suggest to not invest too much into skill points, but instead invest your first 10,000 gold into founding a city somewhere and get it going. As cities are currently the most impressive way to generate wealth. You won't be able to generate nearly as much money as your city will be generating in a short amount of time. So feel free to invest in some skills. For example, I invest most of the time quite early on into some extra points into adventuring up until 20, because that resource discovery skill is just too good. And the other example is athletics, as I really think lunge is a real lifesaver because you can jump away from threats with that. Just 2 things where I think it is absolutely worth it. And by the way, just as a side note, if you start with 0 athletics like anybody else, you can train it by either jumping down and hurting yourself or grabbing a log that's lying on the ground, by pressing G while standing next to it and dragging it along. Can skill you up until 5. After 5, you need to do the jump procedure. Alright, now, to sum it up, the money point, once you've built your city, you can max out your build as you see fit, but it will consume so much gold that I must say, I find it much more valuable to get 10,000 gold together and then get started with the actual build crafting, because yeah, everything else will just consume lifetime of your character and yourself while you're sitting in front of a PC. Now, number 8, if you want to play a mage-focused character, you can make it yourself easier by playing in an older world. Once you've generated the world, you can let the world run for a while, like add in 100 or 200 years of runtime. What that'll do is the cities in the world will become bigger. Once the AI cities are big enough, they will also build buildings that train mages. In a young world, there are almost no cities that are large enough already to have that mages school up and running, so you'll have a terribly hard time in finding teachers for magic. Most of the time, in a young world, you'll be only able to learn floromancy from the elves, and that's pretty much it. So you can easily just circumvent that by make your world older. Works a charm. You can, of course, also build your own city, build that own magic building there, and then just play as your descendant a couple of decades later. But there's options. Just wanted to say, if you're looking for those magic teachers, they spawn if the world gets older. That's pretty much it. Number 9, how to kickstart your gear. So once you are done with all those easy locations and you can't see them anymore, you might ask yourself, what do I need to do for being ready for troublesome locations? There's one really nifty little trick that I personally love to do. There is, in mountain regions, a troublesome region for which includes dwarfs. These dwarfs are bulky little fellas that are pretty heavily armored fighters, and you can find these locations practically in every mountain range. These dwarves have a massive amount of gear for you, namely a chest piece, shield, helmets, and a good axe to fight with. Every fighter character can kickstart himself there. The good thing about it is the dwarves are neither particularly deadly nor are they fast. So if you have any ranged option or knockback option, shield bash works a charm here. You can just keep them at a distance and whittle them down over time. First of them who falls gives you access to excellent gear, and once you have cleared out the entire dwarven dinghy, you have also access to a forge and a smelter, because these locations usually generate with these. I personally think that these are among the best early game ways of getting yourself a good start into the troublesome and later stages of the game, so I personally think that this is absolutely one of the easiest ways to take. Now, number 10, let others do the crafting. So there are a lot of crafting skills that your character can learn, but I personally have come to the conclusion that most of it feels a little bit like a waste of skill points, because in most cities you can find crafters that can do the crafting for you. Just look for people that have a high level in carpentry. Here again, older worlds help a lot. And the trick here is that if you don't find good crafters for your gear, build cities and raise them there yourself. Of course, if the world ain't old enough and there's no crafter around, you obviously have to do it yourself. But I found that self-crafting is is something you should be taking very carefully, as you can sink lots of skill points into that direction, and very quickly you just run into an NPC who can do everything you already spent thousands of gold for, and you can just ask him to craft that stuff, and you just need to carry the materials over there. So all in all, always check out if somebody is out there who can craft that weapon for you, or that armor, or whatever might be up your alley. And yeah, craft with care. Let's put it down like that. Choose it with care. So, with these 10 things in mind, it should be really easy for you to get your foot into the door with the game and realize whatever story is up your mind. I really enjoy Soulash for its freedom in many, many ways, and I hope this will help you out. Let me know in the comment section if you have anything else to share with newcomers, or if you have any questions. I'm all ears and I'm eager to answer. So, drop me your comments down below, leave me a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and feel free to support Icon Gaming. There's ways and means in the link box below, and many thanks for all of you who do, and many thanks to you for watching this video up until the very end. Really means a terrible lot to me. So, see you all next time, and enjoy gaming.